Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 65 of Be With Me. We are following sort of a crazy story about a woman named Tabitha. And two things happen outside the realm of the story. One is she starts before our story as not a saint, and then she becomes a believer. So then she becomes a saint. Okay, so she starts as a non-saint, then she becomes a saint, and then she becomes not a saint. Now, how does that happen? It's because she dies. She dies to us. No one ever dies in God's eyes. She's alive to Christ and alive in heaven. But then the crazy part of this story is she's resurrected from the dead. That is, she becomes a saint again. That is, an alive believer. That's what a saint is. Saint equals an alive believer. And then outside the realm of the story, she becomes not a saint. So she starts before our story is not a saint, then she becomes a saint, then she becomes not a saint, then she becomes a saint, then she becomes not a saint. I mean, what a confusing thing to be heard. All right, so listen to the story. This is from Acts chapter 10. I started it yesterday, but I want to finish it. There was in Joppa a disciple named Tabitha, which translated means Dorcas. She was full of good works and acts of charity. In those days, she became ill and died. So they mention all these ways for us to confirm how dead she was. And when they had washed her, they laid her in an upper room. Since Lydia was near Joppa, 11 miles away, the disciples, hearing that Peter was there, sent two men urging him, "Please come to us without delay." So Peter rose and went with them. And when he arrived, they took him, Peter, to the upper room. All the widows stood beside him weeping. So lots of witnesses to her death, and showing tunics and other garments that Dorcas made while she was with them. In other words, she's not with them. Another confirmation of death. But Peter put them all outside and knelt down and prayed, and turning to the body, another confirmation of her death. They say it like 10 different ways. He said, "Tabitha, arise." And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. And he gave her his hand and raised her up. Then, calling the saints and widows, he presented her alive. And it became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. No kidding. That was my commentary. And he stayed in Joppa for many days with one Simon, a tanner. So we find out who Peter stays with, what this profession is, what his name is, and we find out the results of this crazy thing that happens to this woman where she comes back from the dead, which is a very, very unique activity. So you got to love Tabitha. They talked about her so many ways about she's full of good work, she's full of mercy, she's full of industriousness, she's full of productivity and beauty and craftsmanship. See, look at these tunic things that she's made. So she has some productivity and stuff that her life is so bountiful that there's stuff left over after she stops being a saint, which is an alive Christian. So let's remember, what happens to good people? So Tabitha / Dorcas is a good person. They can't say it enough ways. But what happens to good people? Well, they all die, at least as far as we're concerned. And two things happen beforehand. Either you get old and die, or you get ill and die. And we find out for her, it's that she actually gets ill and dies. But we still see that God cares. God has got this. That's one of the biggest reasons that Jesus came back, is to take the sting out of death for those who believe. So obviously consider that day so you can live well today as she does. All right, so what do saints do? This is another little tidbit in this thing, is saints surround themselves with saints, other disciples. Saints are alive Christians. Recognize good leadership. Surround yourself with other disciples that are pursuing the Lord like she did. And then let's just remember that she wasn't just like sleeping or kind of half dead or something. they say she wasn't with them. They say she died. They say she got ill. They say that this has been days since she's been dying, and she's had witnesses and has gone through the whole, maybe not the whole, but much of the grieving process. The amazing thing is that for almost everybody in all recorded history there's no crossing back over from the resurrected world or the eternal world to the temporary world. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. Tabitha / Dorcas is one of them. Lazarus is another. Elijah raised someone from the dead. And then Jesus raised 500 people from the dead after his resurrection, and he was walking around with them. Okay. So Tabitha here starts her life as not a saint, as all people do. They have to become believers. Then she becomes a saint, and that is an alive believer. Then she becomes not a saint. That is after she dies. Then she gets re-saintized when she comes back into this world. That is, she becomes an alive believer. And then finally, and this is outside the scope of the story, she becomes not a saint again, because then she turns into a witness as a permanent resident of heaven. All right, so number one, you're going to get old and die, or you're going to get ill and die, or you're going to have an accident and die. You're going to leave a reputation. You're going to leave stuff behind, and may it be a blessing to those who are left behind. That just these miracles result in many believed in the Lord, and previously people turning to the Lord, and that's what Acts is all about. So most of us only have one chance to go from being not a saint to a saint. Now, Tabitha had two. Once when she was a non-believer and became a believer. The second when she was in the grave and then came out of the grave. For most of us, here's the charge, is we have a choice whether to be moved from not a saint to a saint. That is, an alive person who's not a believer to an alive person who turns to a believer. So it's a call to belief. Like, that's what happened in the story, is people believed, many believed. May it be you and me and all of us today. Thanks for listening.